Hello, my name is Bob Taylor. I am pleased to be your facilitator for this module of the Financial Literacy course. I come to you today on behalf of the Kiwanis Club of Shallotte-SBI. As a brief overview, this module is titled Pay Yourself First and will provide you some tools for building your financial future. But first, let me give you some brief background about me. I moved to Ocean Isle Beach in early 2019 after retiring from a 40-year career with the federal government. Although retired, I still work part-time. During my federal career, I worked as an auditor for 3 different financial regulatory agencies. I also hold a license as a certified public accountant. Before my professional career, like many of you, I held a variety of part-time jobs while in high school and college. My first job at 14, a job that doesn't exist anymore, was to deliver newspapers door to door in my neighborhood. I would buy the newspapers from the publisher and sell them to my customers, making a small, very small profit on each. This is when I first opened a checking account. The publisher was quite insistent they be paid on time and by check, even if my customers did not pay me on time. Talk about learning quickly that I need to have some savings on hand to cover my bills. This job certainly taught me that. I do need to make a few disclaimers before we begin the material. First, this presentation is based on a course developed by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or FDIC. These are the folks that help ensure your money kept at a bank is safe. Where I've added to FDIC's presentation, that material will be on a slide that looks like this one and is marked in the lower right corner, not an FDIC slide. Second, the views expressed during this presentation are mine alone and may not represent the views of my federal employer, the FDIC, or Kiwanis. Also, I do regret that I am unable to give this presentation in person due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I will not be able to draw on your experiences with saving money, but instead will provide some tips based on my observations and experience, as well as examples from my 2 daughters. Both are now young women in their early 20s, not far removed from their high school days. Obviously, I can't take your questions as I get into the material, which may at times seem very dense. Additionally, I must also admit this is my first time making a YouTube video and that I have a face better suited to radio. Finally, I'd like to take a moment to give a shout out to your school's Key Club, a part of the Kiwanis International family. If you are not familiar with the Key Club, it is a student-led high school organization that strives to make a world a better place through service. In doing so, members grow as individuals and as leaders by answering the call to lead. I am most proud that I was a 4-year member of the Key Club at my high school back in a small Ohio town. I would encourage all of you viewing this course to consider your school's club. With that, let's begin. Okay, we plan to cover 4 things during this module. First, to explain why you should save. Second, to think about your savings goals. Third, to identify savings options available to meet your goals. And fourth, to give some suggestions of which of these options make sense based on your savings goals. I will also provide some of my thoughts, definitely off script, about things that could derail you from reaching your savings goals. So, what does it mean to pay yourself first? As you see by the slide, it is simply put some money in a savings account before you buy things or pay bills, from whatever source that money comes. Those sources may be a job, a gift, or even a tax refund. Paying yourself first is a view that saving money is just as important as paying your expenses. Whether it's a small amount or something bigger, the important thing here is to make saving money a lifetime habit. So why? Well, this is a time-proven way to learn to manage money and being able to achieve your financial goals, be it to pay for a college or other post-high school education, help with family expenses, buy a car, a house, or whatever. In the long term, saving money on a regular basis can help improve your standard of living, provide a rainy day fund for emergencies, and reduce stressing over money generally. It is also important to set both short-term and long-term savings goals. A short-term goal could be saving for a new smartphone, or since this presentation was recorded in December, saving for holiday gifts for family and friends. Another savings goal may be to continue your education after high school. Sorry, folks, unlike your schooling so far, after high school, it is no longer free. Now, long-term goals are just that, for things that may seem far away at this time, but will eventually things you want or need. For example, a down payment on a house, education expenses for your own children, and retirement. Saving now and often for both short and long-term goals is essential to achieving those goals. Now, switching gears a little, we will discuss how your savings grow. In addition to the money you put into a savings account, the bank or thrift will pay you interest on your account balance. This is so they can use the money and that of other depositors to make loans. Interest is paid to you on a fixed schedule depending on your bank and type of account. That schedule may be once a year, every 6 months or quarter, monthly, or even daily. Compound interest is a term used to recognize that interest is not only paid on the money that you would put into your savings account, but also on interest that the bank has paid you already. When you shop banks for the best interest rate, you will see those interest rates expressed as an annual percentage yield, or APY. The APY is the amount of interest you earn on a yearly basis, including the effect of compounding, regardless of whether the interest is paid annually, daily, or on some other fixed schedule. The APY is useful in that it helps you compare one savings account to another for the best deal. Of course, as mentioned in prior modules, it is also important to compare fees charged by different banks. When it comes to savings, you may hear what is called the Rule of 72. This rule is a formula that gives you an idea of how long it will take for your savings to double in value based on the APY interest received. If you added no more money to that account, as you see in the slide, the number of years for your money to double is calculated by dividing 72 by the interest rate. For example, as shown in the slide, if your savings is earning 4% per year, your money would double in 18 years. Okay, so let's get real here. Right now, banks are not paying you anywhere near 4% for a savings account. In fact, the best interest rate I could find looking at 3 banks, which include a large national bank, a large internet bank, and a local credit union, was a paltry 0.4%. Not even close to a single percent. Even at 1%, it would take 72 years for your money to double, according to the Rule of 72. So you may be saying to yourself, why bother saving if this is all I can get? I just won't ever get to see the supposed benefit of interest and compounding. Your frustration here is very understandable, but a couple things to keep in mind. One, as was covered in the first module in this course, your money will be safe and secure in an FDIC insured bank account. You won't have to worry about losing it as opposed to carrying cash. Second, you will likely find during your lifetimes that interest rates will fluctuate, and they can fluctuate by a great deal. The reasons for this are complex and not within the scope of this module. Right now, we happen to be in a period of very, very low rates. That has not always been the case. The chart on the right of this slide, for example, shows interest rates between 1984 and 2020. As you can see, interest rates in 1984 were particularly high, as much as 12%. Using a Rule of 72, money in a savings account at this rate would double in 6 years. The downside during this time was that loan rates charged by banks were likewise very high. Just like now, the early 1980s was an unusual time, but in an opposite direction from today. Okay, we will cover this slide briefly. What it is saying is that banks typically offer three types of accounts that pay interest. One is the traditional savings account. These accounts have no check writing privileges and allow a limited number of withdrawals each month. The next type is the money market deposit account, a form of checking account that does pay interest. The last is a certificate of deposit. These are longer-term savings vehicles, anywhere from 3 months up to 5 or even more years. Typically, the longer the term of the CD, the higher the APY, though that might not always be the case. Also, if you cash in a CD early, there is typically a penalty in that you may lose some of the interest that has been compounded in the account. It is therefore important to think about when you might need the money before buying a CD. Another point this slide makes is that these type of savings accounts are protected from loss as they are federally insured, typically up to $250,000. So, with bank interest rates being near zero, what other options do you have for your savings? There are many options that we call non-deposit investment products, but you need to keep a couple of points in mind. First is that these products generally work best if kept for a long time. If you're looking to use your savings in a week or month or two, these are not the best choices. By long term, we are talking possibly years from now to see a decent return. Also, such investments are not insured by FDIC or guaranteed by your bank, even if sold by the bank. Although not FDIC insured, there are investment products sold and backed by the US government. Other than these government-backed products, you could lose some or all your money. That said, in return for you taking greater risk, these products may earn and grow more than a regular savings account. So what are the various types of investment products? Well, they can be broadly described as stocks, bonds, US Treasury securities, mutual funds, and retirement investments. We will now explore these products in more depth in the next few slides. Okay, stocks are shares of a company, and to hold stock is to own a piece of that company. Stocks do not earn interest, but they may pay stockholders dividends, which come out of the profits of the company. Not all stocks, however, pay dividends if the leaders of the companies decide a better use of the profits is to plow them back into the company. The value of a stock share usually changes on a daily basis. There are many different reasons for this that are driven by the stock market. Also, if the company goes belly up, you could lose all of your investment. Now, a bond is a type of security where you, in essence, make a loan to a company or the government for a period of time. In return, you receive interest. The value of a bond can also change over time as interest rates change. Similar to stocks, corporate bonds may decrease and may decrease significantly if a company goes broke. If you hear the term I-bond or EE bond, these are bonds sold by the US government. I-bonds are sold at face value, have a 30-year term, and receive a rate of return that includes a fixed interest rate and a rate to adjust for the impact of inflation. That is, the increase year over year in the prices of things you buy. The I-bond rate is adjusted every 6 months to protect you against the loss of the value of your savings. So why is inflation protection for your savings important? Well, let's take an example. Say you have saved $100 to buy an electronic game costing that much, but are delaying your purchase for 6 months. However, when you actually go to buy the item 6 months later, you find that the maker has raised their prices, so the game now costs $103. Your savings of $100 will no longer cover the purchase. In short, inflation has caused your savings to be less valuable, and that you can no longer buy the same goods now as you could 6 months ago. The I-bond helps protect you against losing the value of your savings due to inflation. The EE bond also has a 30-year term and receives a fixed rate of interest with no inflation adjustment during this term. The EE bond, however, is sold at half its face value, meaning a $100 EE bond sells for $50. Information about I-bond and EE bond interest rates are published by the U.S. government every 6 months on the website treasurydirect.gov. The next slide, for example, is a notice that was published in November 2020. As you will see in the headline of this notice, I-bonds are receiving a rate of 1.68% for the next 6 months, whereas the non-inflation protected EE bonds are earning 0.1%. Not much different than a savings account with a bank. However, the government guarantees that when an EE bond reaches its 20th year since purchased, it will be worth its face value. So a $100 EE bond purchased for $50 in our example will be worth $100 after 20 years. Using the rule of 72, that means in their 20th year, the EE bond will have earned an interest rate around 3.5%. Not bad in today's interest environment, but again, the bond must be held for a long time, 20 years, to earn that return. As I mentioned before, we are in a period of unusually low interest rates, and we also have relatively low inflation compared to historical trends. But that has not always been the case. This slide points out how the inflation adjustment has impacted the rate of returns for I-bonds during various 6-month periods going back 10 years. While the rate may be currently 1.68%, 10 years ago, the rate was 5.11% during the 6-month period of November 2000 to April 2001. Quite a big difference. Okay, you may be thinking, hey, Taylor, why are you spending so much time to the I-bond, the EE bond? Is this some sort of endorsement? Okay, although I have hold savings bonds as part of my personal savings strategy, I'm not endorsing them or any other investment product. That is not my role in this presentation. But I did want to make you familiar with the product, as many employers may offer them as savings investments through payroll deductions. And you may elect to receive them instead of cash if the filing of your federal tax return with the IRS results in a tax refund. 4 final notes. First, the only way you can purchase I and EE bonds is electronically through a Treasury Direct account on the internet. Second, you do not need to hold an I bond or EE bond for 30 years. However, they cannot be redeemed for at least a year after purchase. So this is not a good option if you expect to need your savings sooner than a year. Also, you have to hold the bonds at least 5 years to avoid a penalty in terms of lost interest upon redemption. Third, should you want to purchase a bond before you are 18, that has to be done through a parent or custodial account in Treasury Direct. And last, there can be some federal tax benefits, that is tax savings, if the savings bonds are redeemed to pay for higher educational expenses. But it's rather complicated how much savings can actually be achieved. For larger investments, a variety of other U.S. government securities are also available through Treasury Direct, which are listed on this slide. Like I-bonds and EE bonds, these securities are backed by the U.S. government, protecting you against loss. Moving on, another type of investment product is the mutual fund. As you can see by the slide, this is a product that combines your money with other investors' money to purchase stocks, bonds, or other investments. Mutual funds, like stock, also go up and down in value, but they allow you to spread the risk of loss across many savings and investment options. Mutual funds come in many flavors. For example, they may invest only in U.S. government or other very safe securities. Others may invest almost exclusively in stocks and either in US stocks, international stocks, or a combination of the two. So what kind of companies does a mutual fund invest in? I'll give you one example on the next slide. Okay, this slide depicts the top holdings of one large mutual fund that targets to invest about half to 70% of its funds in stocks and the remainders in bonds. This is not an endorsement of either this mutual fund or the stock it holds, but you can see that 23% of its holdings are in companies you likely recognize: Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, etc. Altogether, this mutual fund holds over 2,000 stocks and other types of securities, suggesting it's very diversified. Another way of looking at this is if one of the companies is having a bad year and stock going down, the impact to the mutual fund is minimal compared to if this was the only stock you held. Now you may be thinking, buying stocks and shares in a mutual fund is only for people with a lot of money. At one time, that was more the case, but not now. I've been able to buy 100 shares in a major US company for less than $200. With a simple Google search, you can find solid mutual funds that only require $100 or less to invest in. But it is also important to keep in mind that, like individual stocks, the value of your investment in a mutual fund fluctuates with the market, and you can lose money if you need to sell a mutual fund at the wrong time. I'll give you a little personal experience. The first time I bought shares in a mutual fund was in September 1987. I had actually put some money in one mutual fund whose holdings broadly reflected the market, and I put the other money in a mutual fund whose holdings were mostly in one sector of the market. Think of a sector as being things like energy, automotive, healthcare, consumer goods, and so forth. The very next month, in October 1987, the market tanked, losing over 20% in one day, which was known as Black Monday. It was quite a heady experience for a new investor, and yes, I panicked a little with such a deep decline in my hard-earned savings. In taking a long view, I dumped the shares of the first mutual fund, the one with the broad holdings. In doing so, I locked in the loss. The other mutual fund I bought, the one whose holdings were in a particular sector, fell in value even more, so much so I just couldn't sell it and take such a big loss. The upshot was it took nearly 2 years for the market to recover. Now that first fund is my go-to fund today for part of my savings. It has been a decent performer for over many years. As far as the sector-specific mutual fund that I held onto, well, I sold it about 10 years later for triple my initial investment. Not a bad return at all. The point I am trying to make is that stocks and mutual funds need to be viewed as long-term savings, and you have to be able to not overreact to the day-to-day changes in the market, or you will make mistakes. Okay, next I'm going to be talking about retirement investments, and we are going to be spending some time on this slide. You may be thinking, understandably so, why? After all, I'm still in high school. Besides, there's Social Security, right? And what about corporate pensions? Some straight answers. 1, Social Security was meant to be only part of your retirement income. By itself, it will not provide the standard of living in retirement that you had during your working years. 2, corporate pensions are not as common a work benefit as they once were. There are a number of reasons for this, which are beyond the scope of this presentation. The bottom line is that many, if not most of you, will need to save for retirement. And the earlier you start, the more your retirement savings will grow before you need them. What I will now give you is a brief overview of several retirement savings options. The first options I'll cover are the individual retirement arrangement, or IRA, and the employer-offered savings option known as either a 401k or 403b. Please understand that this discussion is at a very high level, and there are many intricacies involved with these products. The takeaway is that you need to consider them in your savings plan. An IRA is a form of a savings account that you set up directly with a bank, brokerage firm, or other type of financial institution. Current tax laws allows you to save up to $6,000 annually in your IRA. There is also a provision that people 50 and over can save an additional $1,000. Money that you earn in an IRA is not taxed until you take the money out. However, if you take out the money before you are 59 and a half, you will also have to pay a penalty. So IRAs are really long-term savings. The primary benefit then is that the money in an IRA grows faster than money in the regular savings accounts and other investments. There are some additional benefits to IRAs depending on a lot of factors. For example, you may be able to exclude some or all your contributions to an IRA from your income that is taxed. And you will not have to pay taxes on that income until you withdraw from your IRA. The immediate tax benefit to an IRA contribution, however, depends on a host of things that are much too numerous to discuss in detail at this time. Similar, a 401k or 403b is a retirement savings plan. However, these are plans arranged by your employer, be it a company, a government unit like a public school system, or a nonprofit charitable organization. You tell your employer how much money you want to put in such a plan from each paycheck, currently up to $19,500 annually if you are under 50, and $26,000 annually if you are 50 and over. Your contribution is excluded from income that is currently taxed on your pay. That means you do not have to pay taxes until you withdraw the money. This tax benefit allows the money to grow more quickly in your account. Some employers may also match some of your savings in these accounts, which can really boost their earning potential. Think of that as free money. But like I said before with IRAs, these should be thought of as long-term investments, as there are generally hefty penalties and taxes due if you withdraw the money early. So what can my savings in an IRA be used for? Well, just about any investment product we talked about. Certificates of deposit, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and a host of other things we haven't mentioned. You make those decisions. Your options are typically more limited with a 401k, depending on how your employers set them up. The options, however, can still be plentiful. One last point with IRAs and 401ks, there is nothing that precludes you from investing both at the same time up to the maximum limits. One word of caution, you should probably invest first in the 401k if your employer is paying a matching share. Typically, an employer offering a 401k or 403b will have specialists working for them that can explain in detail your options so that you leave no money on the table. A third term that comes up from time to time, and you may not have heard of, is the annuity. An annuity is a type of insurance product for which you make payments either in a lump sum or over time in return for receiving a stream of payments after retirement. These are complex products and can be costly in terms of fees if you do not hold them for a long time. In the next slide, I will provide some examples of what an annuity can offer. Okay, say somebody my age, and I'm 67, wants to purchase an annuity to have a steady income, and I have $100,000 in savings to make the purchase. There are many different options available to structure that steady income. For example, say I want a steady monthly income for my remaining lifetime, which I'm hoping will be quite long. At today's interest rates, one insurance company recently estimated such an annuity would provide me about $476 monthly for the rest of my life. There are a couple drawbacks with this option. First, I will not have recovered my $100,000 investment until I reach 85 years old. Say I die before 85, the payments stop. and the insurance company keeps any remaining amount of the $100,000. In fact, should I pass away very soon after making the purchase, the insurance company really makes out. And the insurance company that gave me this estimate even cautioned against this option as not being the best. As another example, I could instead say I want a guaranteed monthly payment for 10 years. Under this scenario, the monthly guaranteed payment would be around $844. And in total, I'll receive a little over $101,000 on my $100,000 investment. If I die before 10 years are up, my heirs continue to receive the payment for remaining period left. But this option will not provide me with a lifetime income if I live past the 10 years. All in all, like I said, these are complex products, but nevertheless may have a place in your financial future. I have one more investment product to talk about before we start wrapping up. That is a 529 college savings plan. You can set up a 529 plan for yourself or for another one, say when you have children or grandchildren. The benefit of a 529 is the earnings are not taxed at the federal and state level if used for qualified educational expenses, things like tuition, books, board, and the like at a qualified college or trade school. 529 college savings plans may be operated by a state, an educational institution, or a financial institution. They can also be in the form of prepaid tuition, for which in return for upfront payments, a state guarantees the tuition will be covered at a state institution for a set number of semesters or quarters. A 529 may also be a fund that can be drawn against for eligible expenses. However, these funds are really meant to be used for education. While the owner of the fund may withdraw his or her contributions and earnings for other than education, taxes and hefty penalties will be due on the earnings. In short, this is not a good savings product for funds you may need soon or for some purpose other than education. Okay, I'd like to spend the last few minutes of this module to offer my views on things that can derail you from meeting your savings goals. Sorry if this is a bit of a downer and on the preachy side, but I think these are important points to consider. Also, while I'm suggesting you avoid certain financial products, each of them has their place, and there may be a time when you need them. But if you have the ability to avoid them, I encourage you to do so, as they can be very costly. In other modules for this course, we have covered the concept of wants versus needs. This is something that's very personal to your situation, and there is no one size fits all. What may be a want for one person may be a need for another, and one should take care in making value judgments of others. Just keep in mind that a want can be viewed as a savings opportunity, a need not so much, if at all. For example, in a community like Brunswick County, public transportation options are far fewer than in large metropolitan areas like Washington, D.C. or New York City, to name a few. So one could very well need a car in Brunswick, whereas it's possible to live just fine without a car in an area like D.C., though having one would be a matter of convenience. So let's say we've established that a car is a possible need here in Brunswick County. Now the want versus the need question involves the type of car. For example, a shiny new sports car versus a less costly basic ride with less flash. Another money sucker, in my view, and for lack of a better term, are electronics like smartphones. While a smartphone may be a need in today's society, upgrading to the latest and greatest every year may fall in that category of a want. For example, last year, I upgraded to a new smartphone and replaced my 5-year-old one. It had all the latest stuff at the time, but just recently, the maker came out with the new 5G model. Oh no, do I now have a dinosaur? With smartphones, my perception is that these annual upgrades tend to be evolutionary, not revolutionary. So I'll pass on the newest phone. For one thing, the 5G network is still being built out, and mostly I only download files connected to my internet at home, So 5G, at least for me, is hardly a need. So what is the deal with lattes? Well, the high school where my daughters went in Northern Virginia was near one of the nationwide coffee shops. And one daughter didn't think twice before getting $5 coffee drinks several times or more a week. I also had coworkers who would get them every day. You can do the math. These can add up quickly. A need or a want. Think about. Sounds like a savings opportunity to me. Similar to the coffee shop latte or frequent stops at your favorite fast food. Going to the next bullets on this slide, again, you may have a need to use a financial product such as a check casher, a revolving credit card where you incur interest charges monthly, payday lenders, and the like. However, if you have the choice and considering their costs, I encourage avoiding these products. For example, there is at least one national retailer who would be happy to cash your paycheck, all for the advertised low fee of just $4. But why fork over nearly a half hour's pay if you don't need to when you can deposit the paycheck in a bank account for free? Another thing to watch out for, as it is simply very costly with little benefit, is overdrawing your bank account or missing a credit card payment. The overdraft and late fees just rack up and quickly. And just one last money sucker and I'll stop. That is traffic tickets. Many of you may just be getting your driver's or motorcycle licenses and finally enjoying the open road. That's great and congratulations. But a note of caution. I have personally derived absolutely no benefit from one speeding ticket that I received. It is hard to think of an expense that provides so little satisfaction in return. Not only does the state get your hard-earned money, you can also see higher premiums when your insurance renews, the double whammy. Traffic tickets, in my view, are really the most avoidable drains on money. Just saying, it's a good idea to obey traffic laws and keep the speed down. We are almost done. Yay, you probably say. Before we go, let's just do a check on what we hope you learned. That is, remember that it's important to have a savings plan to pay yourself first. You have many different options for where to put your savings. Which ones are best depend on, one, when you need the money, two, how important it is to you that you not take any or little risk with loss of your money, and three, what the savings are to be used for and when. The simple savings account at an FDIC insured bank or insured credit union is certainly a good start and should be part of your savings plan over a lifetime. Whatever you earn in interest will be compounded over time. As your savings grow and the need less immediate, you have a world of options available to you for other types of investment, depending on your planned use of the money and your risk appetite. So thank you for your time to view this module, and I wish the best of luck to you in your financial future. And please stay safe and please follow the 3 W's during this COVID pandemic emergency. Goodbye.